listening.
Yes.
This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Script darts!
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 070. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. What'd you say?
Script darts.
Script darts.
I was trying to throw it in there as fast as I could. Script darts.
We have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. Falsificationism, some skeptical stuff. I have a bunch of strange articles about strange things.
I have 3 very normal articles about normal things.
And we have, of course, space weather news. But as always, we are joined by our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England from deep in outer space. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Excited to see what happens with the satellite uplink.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble with our internet connection, so hopefully it'll be okay.
I think maybe the space news space weather news might explain this problem that we're having right now.
It's very possible.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's get to the space weather news, and we'll see if this disconnects our connection.
Using the Portal soundbite for our news song there. Sorry about that.
No, that was cool.
I'll come up with a better one later.
Where is my space weather news?
That's all I need. I just need to put a couple of little notes
Yeah, so you
on
can
the
play
keyboard
some
up here, and I'll
keyboard
just,
up here.
I'll just jam it out every time.
All right, space weather news. Geomagnetic storm predicted. NOAA forecasters say there is a 60% chance of a G1 class geomagnetic storm on October 19th, when a stream of solar wind is expected to graze Earth's magnetic field. The gaseous material is flowing from a northern hole in the sun's atmosphere. Arctic skywatchers should be alert for auroras before the weekend. So we need to get down and look at the Marfa lights.
Yeah.
All right, meteors from Halley's Comet. Right now, specks of dust from Halley's Comet are disintegrating in Earth's atmosphere, kicking off the annual Orionid meteor shower. NASA cameras caught more than a dozen Orionid fireballs streaking across the USA during the past 48 hours, and the show is expected to improve during the weekend as Earth moves deeper into Halley's stream of debris. The upcoming Orionids should prove a fairly good show for most visual observers, says Peter Brown of the University of Western Ontario Meteor Physics Groups. The shower's radiant is already quite active and well-defined in data from the Canadian Meteor Orbit Radar. Orionids appear every year around this time when Earth crosses Halley's debris stream, with the shower typically producing about 20 meteors per hour. Some of the brightest stars and constellations in the sky, e.g. Orion the Hunter, Sirius the Dog Star, and Taurus the Bull, form the shower's backdrop. This makes the display extra beautiful in disproportion to the raw number of meteors. Some years, however, are better than others. Most notable was a short-lived outburst of relatively bright Orionids in 1993, observed several days before the predicted peak. This hints that there may be narrow filaments of larger meteoroids embedded in the overall debris stream, says Brown. We also observed enhanced Orionid activity through the years 2006 through 2009 with rates 2 to 3 times normal. This year's shower has one thing going against it, the nearly full moon. Lunar glare could reduce visible meteor rates 2 to 3-fold. The best time to look, therefore, is during the dark hours before sunrise, when the moon is sinking below the western horizon and the shower's radiant in Orion is high in the southeast.
Cool. Too bad. Earth weather news is cloudy skies of Texas.
That's right.
Will not be able to see the. What is this? The Orionids?
Yeah.
And that is Halley's Comet meteor.
Yeah. It's the Halley's Comet stream.
Wow, that's cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Space weather
I
news
saw
is cool.
Halley's Comet. We saw it.
Yeah, we did. Long time ago.
Long time ago.
And I'll probably be dead before it comes back.
Nope. I'll be android. Be half robot by then.
Will be uploaded into the AI stream.
I think we're done dying, man. That's of old age, anyway.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I think a few body parts be replaced.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You already think there are robots walking among us?
No, I don't. I think robot body parts are being built among us right now.
That's true. That is true.
They are being developed. I mean, imagine it, like 30 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, the prosthetics are already connecting to people's brains. And
Yeah. 30 years from now, like, just, okay, yeah. Build me one of those badass glass bowls, put my brain in it. On top of that badass spider thing you have right there.
yeah.
Bulletproof glass bowl for my brain.
Yeah.
With nice LED lights around the rim.
There you go.
It's like lights it up. Looks
Yeah.
badass.
Bulletproof glass bowl. Yeah, just make sure. I just remember reading an old anime. I
My
have-
8 legs, all with hands and fingers, and I'll play 4 guitars same time.
I had those anime graphic novels of. I can't remember what it was called, but that there was a guy
Battle
with
Angel?
Yeah. There was a guy with the brain in the glass bowl, and she's all.
Yes. Battle Angel.
Yeah.
Alita.
Yeah, you just got to make
freaking
sure your
awesome.
brain doesn't get schlepped out of that glass bowl.
That's right. You just make sure that you don't get attacked by a guy with a hammer with a jet on the back of it.
That's right. Or somebody who can use like chi in their hand, their hand punch.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, what stories do you got?
No. Vast explosions are throwing out gold, platinum, and many of the world's most precious elements.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fast explosions?
Yeah, vast explosions in outer space.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So-
Novas.
You were talking about this, like, we were talking about how can all these veins of gold be, like, coming to the surface? Because if the planet formed...
Like they think it did. Then all that heavy stuff.
all the
should be down in
heaviest
middle.
shit, the gold would be down in the core.
Yeah. Yeah. If it was a slow accretion of solar system material, it should be down in the core. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just odd. I'm going to read this story to you guys. Vast cosmic explosions could be flinging gold and platinum across the universe, NASA scientists reveal. That's the headline. And this is from independent.co.uk. Vast explosions throwing out gold, platinum, and many of the world's most precious elements could be happening throughout the universe. NASA scientists have spotted what they think are immense explosions caused by neutron stars colliding into each other in distant space. When that catastrophic event happened, it sent an intense jet of high-energy particles through space that made their way past scientists. Who spotted them using NASA's array of space telescopes. Looking at the data from those telescopes could shed more light on some of the most spectacular and intense collisions found in space. And that was a period. And it could suggest that significant events of the kind described by scientists are relatively common. The researchers think the explosion could be a kilonova. That is a bright flash of radioactive that flings out huge quantities of important elements like silver, gold, platinum, and uranium. You see what I was complaining before we started the show about the way these articles are written.
Yeah, badly edited.
They're badly edited, and I'm not sure if that was a joke. This explosion shot out these freaking, like, highly charged particles past scientists.
That was actually in there?
Yes! I'm not.
I thought you added it yourself.
No. I just emphasized it a little bit, but yeah. A jet of high-energy particles through space that made their way past the scientists, who spotted them using NASA's array of space telescopes.
Like these neutron star collisions are shooting stuff at scientists.
That's right. The scientists are just out there, and it went past them, and they were like, oh. So, anyway... okay, so back to the kilonova. That is a bright flash of radioactive that flings out huge quantities of important elements like silver, gold, platinum, and uranium.
Missing words.
Yeah. The announcement comes after scientists announced last October they had seen the first explosion of this kind. They spotted super dense stars smashing into each other 130 million light years away, wobbling the space-time of the universe and allowing them to be picked up by gravitational wave detectors at LIGO.
Yeah, I remember that event.
Yeah, wobbling the space-time, which is what moved that laser.
Yeah.
The wobbling of space-time. At the time, the discovery was hailed as a new chapter in astrophysics and an unexpected discovery. It allowed scientists to understand the spectacular explosions of neutron stars, as well as answering questions about where gold comes from. Now scientists have found what they think might be a related event known as GRB 1501010B, 1B, and one that suggests such spectacular explosions could be far more common than we had realized. The similarities between the two events have led researchers to suggest they might in fact be related. So, I guess
So GR is a GRB is a gamma ray burst.
yeah. It's a big step to go from one detected object to two, said study lead author Eleonora Troja,
Yeah.
a researcher at the University of Maryland in NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Our discovery tells us that events like GW170817 and GRB150101b could represent a whole new class of erupting objects that turn on and off, and might actually be relatively common. The two look very similar, both threw out a short gamma ray burst and a flash of bright blue optical light. They also seem to come from very similar galaxies. Together, that has led scientists to believe that they are related, and that therefore many more similar events might be happening throughout the universe.
Yeah.
So, cosmic lookalikes.
You do have to wonder what, I mean, like, it's hard to imagine what a collision of two neutron stars would even look like. I mean, just go, obviously going with the standard model, what a neutron star is, and then imagining those two of those colliding is difficult to do.
Oh yeah.
Same thing with black holes. Like, how do two black holes collide with each other? What happens exactly?
This is one they're talking about, the possibility of a merger between a black hole and a neutron star.
Yeah, that would still be spectacular, but it's less difficult to comprehend because the black hole would just absorb the neutron star, however quickly or slowly.
But would you get one of those massive, like, polar freaking outbursts?
No, I'm sure, yeah. Because the material is being destroyed.
And it would be like heavy metals and all kinds of crazy shit flying out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it would. The idea is that any material that actually falls into the event horizon that doesn't fall directly in, but that goes in a spiral,
gets completely ripped
It gets
apart.
yeah, it's called total conversion. The material gets completely converted into energy, or a lot of it does, because of the tides. Because the tidal forces at the event horizon are so intense that it actually rips it apart on the subatomic and subatomic level, and that basically causes total conversion into energy. And then because of the spin of the black hole and the magnetic fields around it, it sends it out as jets in the North and South Pole.
Jets of what?
Of like deadly gamma ray bursts, high energy photons.
So it's not really
Metals.
Yeah.
But there would be like material that didn't fall in that would escape, that would, I guess you could imagine coming out as metals, but
Okay, but that's a black hole scenario. So like with just the two neutron stars like smashing and then exploding.
They don't have an event horizon, but they do have high tides, high tidal forces, because the surface gravity on a neutron star is in the millions of Gs.
Yeah, it's going to spread whatever out all the way across the entire surface.
Right.
Whatever you put there.
Yeah, it's going to spread out in the thin film over the entire thing.
You can take one butter knife with butter, and you can butter an entire neutron star with it.
With one swipe.
With one swipe, dude. Just drop that butter on
That's
there,
right.
and it will just completely cover it.
It will be you and the butter knife and the butter all would spread out onto the neutron star.
Perfectly even.
That's right. And the neutron star would flash bright white because it
Yep,
would get
it would
really
toast
hot.
you real quick.
That's right. And then it would cool off. That's called a gamma ray butter.
Okay, now
I wish my toast would do that when I buttered it. Just put it on there and it goes whoosh, and flashes in your face, and it's perfectly spread out over the entire thing in an even film.
Okay, so my next story is NASA has a brilliant plan. Brilliant is in quotations for some reason. This is the Daily Mail. A brilliant plan for the cloud city of airships in the atmosphere of Venus.
Oh yeah, I
See
saw
that one?
this.
Yeah,
I
this
saw
looks
this.
cool.
Yeah.
So the atmosphere of Venus is so dense that they can make these airships and basically build like a sky city
Yeah.
that would basically
Calling Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, they basically like cruise these things down in there. They have solar panels all over the top and basically just like float along in the upper atmosphere of Venus and explore the planet. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, we could do that with Jupiter too and Saturn. Any of the
Yeah.
gas giants, you'd be able to do that. You could float in a habitable-ish zone in the atmosphere where it was warm enough, where the temperature was right. Just make sure that the gases are right too. You might have to, I mean, even if the gases are bad, you just stay inside the facility. But yeah.
Yeah, so NASA's currently working on a conceptual manned mission to Venus.
That's
named
cool.
The High Altitude Venus Operational Concept.
That's badass.
Epoch.
Havoc! Cry, havoc! And loose the sky cities of Venus.
Pretty cool, dude. And then, they could, maybe coincide with Sun Probe. Okay, I have one more, and this is just a follow-up. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm bringing this up, but I've done the fast radio burst stories in the past couple of podcasts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, one of the ones I was reading about a while ago, there's a news story about it. Mysterious fast radio burst signals that could be evidence of advanced alien civilizations are spotted closer to Earth than ever before.
Right. Yeah, I saw that too.
And then the one that it actually is FRB 171020, which was one that I reported on the first time. It's still in that same group of 19 that they found.
Yeah, I remember in that story it was saying one of them is closer to Earth than ever before.
And so, yeah, this is just a new story.
Yeah.
That's
focusing on that specific one.
Okay, so focusing on that specific aspect. So
Yeah.
if anybody saw that, it's the same one.
Yeah, it's not a new one, but the reason they're focusing on that is because FRBs are supposed to be incredibly far away.
Right.
And this one is actually, I think it's like less than half the distance of all the rest of them or something like that.
Let's find out, because this was actually the funny part. It's 100 million light years away.
Yeah, it's very
And
close.
so, you got to read the comments. You got to check out these people in the comments are like, extremely close to Earth. It's 100 million light years away. Come on.
Right, but all the rest of them are 250,
I know,
300 million. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
It's let's all jump in the family sedan and go check this place out.
It's incredibly
It's
close.
in another galaxy. It's really close to us, guys.
Yeah, everything in space is relative.
Yeah.
But I mean, the quasars are all supposed to be edge of the known universe type of thing, but they were finding them closer and closer as well.
That seriously sounds like the flat earthers to me. They're on the edge of the universe. Really?
Edge of the known universe.
Right. Yeah. What happens when you get out there? You just
You fall off the edge.
You fall out of the universe? Come on. If I go past the edge of the universe, I'm making more universe.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the edge of the known universe because previous to that, you have to remember that looking back looking out also looks back in time. So the farther out you look, the farther back in time, according to the standard model, you're looking. And so the edge of the known universe, is right before you get to what they call the Dark Ages, which is the period after the Big Bang, before stars began to form, and their light pierced the clouds of hydrogen. So beyond that edge is just dark clouds of hydrogen.
I don't know, man. Until there's new data, I'm kind of privy to the
flat universe theory. The flat universe theory.
Yeah, flat universe. No, a halt and ARP,
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
I don't know if I believe in the intrinsic redshift idea or whatever because it was hard for me to figure out what he was talking about exactly with the intrinsic aspect, but like the matter was being created and so something or other. But
yeah, the Watcher is asking, it is unknown what happens once you go outside the known universe, right? Yeah, I guess. I mean,
I think he's making a joke.
I don't know.
It is unknown what happens once you go outside the known universe,
right? Yeah. I think it's unknown what you're going into. There you go. Yeah. Well, the idea that I'm talking about, if you look at standard model cosmology, the edge of the known universe is just as far as we can see. It doesn't mean that it's the actual edge of the universe itself. Like last week we were talking about sci-fi, right? So Larry Niven had this thing in his stories that he called known space.
Yeah.
So known space was a sphere in space that was so many light years wide that was just the extent that any human in any ship had traveled to. That was called known space because it was mapped by people who had actually gone there. So this is the same idea. Known universe.
Known universe implies that we know things about it. That's funny. Watcher.
Well, it's like, okay, how about this? You're inside your house and it's dark. And you look out a window, right? And the light from your window is casting light onto your yard, and you can see so far, and then the light fades and it becomes dark. That's your known yard.
Right.
At that given point, like, that's what we're doing. We're looking out of the universe.
We're able to see all this.
Yeah, we're able to see all that. We may not know what that stuff is, or we're guessing because we can't actually go to it. But that's the known universe, is the distance that the light is coming to us.
Yeah.
So,
and basically, if you got all the way out there and then you went past that part, it would be like.
That's right, and you would learn new stuff. And but remember also, like this, I've said this before, but you have to remember that everything we're looking at out in deep space are things that are exploding.
Stand down and die.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out in space that isn't exploding.
And
like
we can't see it.
Right. We are not exploding. So if you're way out in space looking back at us, you can't see us because we're sitting next to something that's exploding.
We're not on fire.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
Eventually, we will be.
That's right. Why am I not on fire? And then you will be. But yeah, basically most of the things we look at in space are on fire, or they're next to something that's on fire, like a nebula is next to stars that are burning, and so we can see the nebula because it's being lit by the thing that's on fire.
Yeah.
But there's tons of objects in space that are not on fire that we can't see, so we don't really know what's out there. Just like when you're looking out your window into your yard at night, there is stuff that's not reflecting the light that you cannot see.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah.
I wish there was. This is really hard to say. I wish there was more information for my brain to describe the electromagnetic spectrum. In other words, like, I have colors,
Yeah.
but once you get above the visible light spectrum, the color spectrum, like, you get into the radio.
Yeah.
It's like the only way we can illustrate what's going on in the radio is to, like, just shift the color spectrum up there.
Right.
To give you another representation, like.
Right. Most radio telescope images you see do that. They have a color spectrum across it that shows you the different wavelengths of radio waves. Yeah.
Yeah. But no,
that doesn't actually tell you what you're
that's
looking at.
not really. Yeah.
That's not what it looks like.
I want more information. I want because you know that there's there is something there. Like if we had a sensor that could pick it up.
Yeah.
But
we have full spectrum cameras. But for you to look at it, the software has to transfer it into colors.
Into the frequencies that we pick up.
Right.
So our freaking sensors are outdated, man. So that's going to be my first Android body part. Like give me a full spectrum camera eye, and so that my brain can eventually like build the other things that represent the radio waves.
Yeah.
God, that would be freaking badass.
Yeah, you'll see all the radio transmissions. People's cell phones would be bright. Yeah.
There would just be like weird, like strange light all over the place all the time. Doesn't matter day or night.
Yeah. So there's that guy that's colorblind that did that. He put a full spectrum camera on and he used the
sounds. Tones,
and his brain eventually learned to translate the sounds directly into visual cues.
Yeah, that's cool.
So now he walks around and he can see radio waves and ultraviolet and infrared.
Yes, he converted that shit way down low.
Yeah. Well, he was just using a different sensor.
Well, yeah, I mean, he converted the frequencies down to audible range.
Right, but his brain is actually translating them into visual imagery.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, he says he doesn't hear the tones anymore.
Yeah.
You know, eventually it becomes built into your world.
He's building
a visual image of the world based on those tones, and he doesn't hear the tones
like you
anymore.
You already do that with your ears.
Yeah.
Which is how you have spatial awareness.
Yeah.
With your ears, like if you're being crushed in one of those trash compactors in Star Wars, you can tell. It could be in the pitch black, and you know those walls are getting closer.
Right.
Because of your ears. They're telling you that the walls are about to smash you.
That's a great example, Kyle.
Thank you.
Even if the walls are totally silent when they're moving inwards.
That's
right. And none of the trash is making any noise.
That's right.
You can still tell those walls are getting closer. Even if you're not making any noise, just the reflections of your breath and stuff like that coming off the walls will tell you that those walls
They will tell
are
you
closer.
that you need to GTFO
That's right.
as fast as possible. Grab that couch and get out of there.
Pick that pipe up and put it across those walls to hold them back for a little while. All right, so one of the things we were going to talk about, and this is in the vein of skeptics and skirp derping and falsification. So falsification, we've talked about this before. The philosophy of science itself and of the scientific endeavor, or of scientific inquiry, I guess you would say, the heart of it is falsification, right? And this is basically because since we can't, I say this often, since we can't ever know everything, we can't ever know anything for sure or for certain.
Yep.
Right? So because there could be any number of facts around the corner that could completely turn on its head what you thought was true before, we can't ever lay something out and say this is exactly what's going on.
Okay, can I throw in something?
Yeah.
In that Richard Feynman book, the character of physical law.
Yeah.
He gives this example of a chess game. And this is basically what you're saying. Like when you sit down and start watching people play chess for the first time, you've never seen the game before.
Okay.
You can start picking up some rules.
Right. That certain pieces can only move in certain ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so you get this idea. It's like, oh, okay, I'm kind of getting the idea that like once you lose that queen, you can never have a queen again.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll watch a game where somebody gets a pawn to the other end and then they get a queen back.
Right.
So then you know that a queen can be gotten again.
Right. But previously you thought that
It couldn't happen.
Yeah.
But then you're like, but it's only the queen.
Because that's all they ever get, right? Yeah.
But eventually somebody picks something else and you're like,
Right.
oh, maybe
Yeah.
they can
They
get
haven't lost their queen yet,
only
so they
those
get their
two.
rook.
Or maybe something specific happened. So like eventually after a long, long time, you think you know all the rules. And then out of nowhere, somebody does something like castling.
Yeah. And you're like,
just
what
like,
the
what? So to figure out that rule, it would take you so long of seeing, because there's a very specific set of circumstances that allow you to castle.
Yeah.
So that's
That are
what
rare, yeah.
That's what he's talking about. Is it like with the universe, it's like we know that we can never know everything, all the rules. We can never know how everything obeys in every possible
Right.
circumstance.
You can never make all possible observations.
That's right. So you can never know any one thing for certain. Like you can only have one queen.
right.
But as long as you observe the universe, you might only see that you only have one queen.
Yeah.
But then you can be fairly certain that that's the way it's normally done.
Right. But you have to leave it open for possibility.
That you can actually have more than one.
Right. And the reason for that is because of the whole philosophy. The entire mind exercise or mind experiment is very simple. Anyone can understand that it is impossible for humans to have all possible information. That's just not possible. Because of that, it is impossible for humans to ever claim that something is 100% certain.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you've got that, once you've grasped that, then you see why the purpose of an empirical of empirical scientific studies is to falsify, because we can say that something is wrong or false. You can do that. It is possible to falsify things. So
And
unlike
why is that? I mean, it's like in practice, it makes sense. It's like, because if somebody makes a claim like, oh, well, I've observed this thing doing this,
yeah.
and it always does that. Well, you can falsify that it always does it by observing it doing something else some one time.
Right.
Then you can say,
Right.
That
Whereas
it's false that it always
that
does it.
person could have done all their observations for their entire lives and never seen the circumstance that led you to falsify what they saw.
Right.
Right. But they would be wrong in concluding that
was always the way it
what
was.
happened.
Yeah.
So they would leave it if they know what they're doing and they know the philosophy of science, they would leave it open to possibility. They would say, this has always been observed, and so here's my theory on how this works. But if this is ever observed, then that falsifies the whole theory.
Right.
Right. And so then if somebody then sets up the circumstances to try to observe what they were saying would falsify their theory and does observe it, then that falsifies the theory, and that strengthens science because now we know that this isn't the case.
You're getting closer to the truth by getting rid of the things that aren't the truth.
That's right.
So if you can continually like get rid of things that aren't the truth, you can approach the truth.
Right. Even though you can never actually be on it for sure. Like you
For
can,
certain.
For
yeah.
certain.
You
yeah.
might be on it.
You might be on it,
can't
but
be
you
certain
can't
about
ever know. And this is the point. This is why the whole search for truth is very interesting, because the way we search for truth is by showing what is not true.
Yeah.
Right? And once you've grasped the philosophical concept that the truth itself is unreachable in certainty, then you stop trying to do that, right? And this is where so much bad science comes from, is people thinking that they can prove something true. And then getting incredibly
or just
angry.
asserting that they've done it.
Right.
And
yeah, exactly. Like, so this is why doing things a priori is bad, like going in with a preconceived idea and then trying to prove that to be the truth is completely unscientific.
yeah.
That is not how that's not an empirical, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a,
Study
yeah,
like
an empirical investigation.
yeah, okay.
An empirical investigation of the world, like, means that you go in with no a priori assumptions. Okay, you may have some ideas or whatever, and you have to narrow down your scope. Obviously, you can't just look at everything. You have to narrow your scope, but you can't go in there with a preconceived idea of what is correct and only look for things that support that. Because you're inevitably going to miss things that don't support it, and those things that don't support it would actually strengthen scientific knowledge by showing that this isn't true because of this thing that was found, right?
Yeah.
This is why the whole out-of-place artifact thing drives me nuts. You know, I had the saying that there are no such thing as out-of-place artifacts, only out-of-date theories.
Yeah.
An out-of-place artifact is not out of place.
That's right.
That's where it was. It isn't out of place. Your theory is wrong. Am I sweating yet?
No,
Damn it!
We'll take a break. We'll turn the AC on for a minute.
All right.
We'll just keep it cool in here.
Yeah, so we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and continue this about falsificationism by a man named Popper. I can't remember his full name, but the watcher will find it for us.
From across the sands of time to the tangent cube of science, through forked tongues, we speak to annoy the in-laws of the world. Keep them awake. All right, let's back to falsification. What are we talking about here?
All right, so a man named Karl Popper tried to come up with basically a test of a type to determine whether or not something could be falsified. So it was sort of an easy. He wanted to see if there was an easy way to determine if a theory itself was flawed in the fact that it couldn't or could be falsified. Like if it couldn't be falsified, it was flawed. That was his idea, and he tried to determine if there were common things that you could look for, simple, easy things that you could look for that would determine whether or not a theory could be falsified.
Yeah, he tried to find a basic, like,
principle
way that you could plug any theory into this thing to figure out if it was falsifiable or not.
Right, and if it wasn't falsifiable, then you could just discard it because
Right.
it was a bad theory, right?
Yeah. Like he tried to figure out that there was ways that you could look at any theory or whatever to discover whether or not it was falsifiable.
Right. Instead of having to dig into it and determine it, he was like, are there simple ways, easy ways where you can just look at this and say, nope, that theory is not falsifiable and therefore we should discard it. And he actually wrote a paper on this, and it may be many papers. But eventually, later in his own life, he determined that his own idea about, and then he called this falsificationism. He determined that it was wrong, that it was flawed, that his idea about falsificationism itself was flawed and therefore should be discarded. So,
Right. In other words, that there wasn't a simple formula that you could plug any theory into to figure out whether it was falsifiable or not.
Right.
That was what was flawed and false.
right. But often when I have told people online, when I've like tried to show them that some theory or another is unfalsifiable and falsification is what science is about, they will come back with, oh, the whole falsification thing was discarded, blah, 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 Popper, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no. Now, I actually had to go and research this because I didn't know what they were talking about at first. I was like, what is this deal with Popper, you know? So I went and researched it, and once you look... Okay.
Basically, you researched it and you figured out it was false.
That's right, I falsified it. Basically, what it looks like to me is these people will see my word falsification and then go look that up and then come up with... and then get articles about Popper and then determine that his idea was discarded, and then they will tell me that the whole idea of falsification was discarded.
Yeah.
So when I went and read about it, and it took me days, I read his whole paper and all the works on it, and I eventually determined, no, what was discarded was Popper's idea of falsificationism, this principle of being able to plug any theory into it to determine whether it's falsifiable or not. That was determined to be incorrect and false.
Right. Undoable.
Right.
Not doable.
But it wasn't falsification itself. This is
Right.
the thing that people get confused on, or they're purposefully being disingenuous. I don't know which one it is. But if I'm just saying, like, you know, we've tried to, on this podcast, we've tried to give you guys, like, an understanding of the tactics of skirptards, and this is one of them. They will tell you that falsification was dropped in the early 1900s because Popper was wrong about this whole thing. Okay? So, that's not correct. Falsification is still at the heart of the empirical scientific investigation. It's falsificationism that Popper came up with that has been discarded, and rightly so.
Yeah, he discarded it himself.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be, you know, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That he had, that he could actually come up with a way. Because if he actually succeeded, if there really was a way to do that,
Yeah.
that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Because you could just.
And when you look at his paper initially, it does look like it would work. But
Yeah.
then he actually later on wrote another one showing how it was incorrect, and I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. It totally wouldn't work. But when I first read the paper, I was convinced. I was like, wait, why is this bad? And then I read his next stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's right. This wouldn't work. It wouldn't.
Yeah, he thought about it from a different angle and figured.
And discovered that he was wrong.
Yeah. Falsified it.
Falsified his own falsificationism. But falsification itself is not discarded, but people will tell you it is, and that's the thing. It's an attempt to defend the way science is so often done now, which is completely wrong. It's an attempt to defend the fact that people are trying to prove things true rather than show that. Okay, basically the idea is you come up with a theory and then you say, if these things are found, it's false.
Yeah.
And then you try to find those things, and you publish the paper so that other people will try to find those things. And then if those things continue to not be found, your theory becomes stronger, but it still isn't. You still can't say that it's true.
Right.
The problem is if there's a theory that is unfalsifiable, then it should be discarded by science. Like the many worlds theory or the multiverse is unfalsifiable. It cannot be discovered to be true or not. At least not in any way we know of.
Yeah.
So, any theory that's unfalsifiable.
If you find a bug that has 7 legs, it came from another alternate universe. Thus proves my theory.
I'm not saying it doesn't even mean that it doesn't even mean that things like the many worlds theory should be completely thrown out. It's just that you have to realize that such theories being unfalsifiable are not something you should ever accept as being the answer. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Am I explaining this correctly? Like, if a theory is unfalsifiable, you should view it as being unscientific in the fact that it cannot be empirically studied.
Right.
There's no way. If there's no way to falsify it, then it is not a good theory.
I agree with that.
Or I should say, it's not that it's not a good theory. If there's no way to falsify it, it's unscientific.
It's not really a theory
Right.
if you can't falsify it.
Right. Because you're right. Because a theory is a scientific thing.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I thought one of the things about a theory was that it had to have certain qualities about it, things that you could
Check.
check.
Right. That's what I mean. So like it shouldn't even be considered to be a scientific theory if it's unfalsifiable. That's why I'm saying the many worlds theory is not really
Yeah.
a theory. It's a philosophical concept.
Yeah. So, I think we were talking about this, but there's this TV show, The Man in the High Castle,
Yeah.
and it got me thinking about the many worlds theory. And like in The Man in the High Castle, there are people who can travel across these universes.
Right.
And it occurred to me that if that would have been, if possible at all, then there would be an infinite number of travelers because there's an infinite number of universes.
Right. Even if there was only one traveler in every universe, there would be an infinite number.
That's right. And they would not all be humans.
Right, of
So
course
we
not.
would have like an
Giant
infinite number
centipedes.
of like crazy,
Yeah.
insane beings. There would be an infinite number of universes that didn't have our world where it is right now.
Right.
But then there would also be an infinite number that where our world was in the exact same place that it is right now.
Yeah.
But none of the beings are the same.
Right. There would be an infinite number where it was still Tiamat.
That's right. So it's like you start jumping universes.
Yeah.
If you jump into one where the world isn't where it is,
Yeah.
then you're screwed.
Right.
But if you jump into one like where there was no beings on that world like you, because evolution went in a totally different direction.
It's ruled by Cephas.
Yeah.
You're
So
dead.
it's like we can pretty much safely say, I think, that the many worlds theory is either correct and nothing can transverse across
Right.
universes, which is why the hell do we care then?
Right.
Or it is completely incorrect because
Right.
if it was true and if there were infinite number of universes, then there probably would be the possibility that somebody could jump them.
Right. Exactly.
Because in infinity, like
anything could happen.
anything can happen. So
Right.
So you would
the very basics of physics will be different in an infinite number of those universes.
right. So you should have jumpers
Right.
that can jump universes, and because we're not inundated constantly by an infinite number of crazy, totally different looking beasts.
Yeah. Now it is possible. Now that you got me thinking about it, I guess that in those infinite number of universes, there would be some where jumping would be impossible. So you could be a jumper from a different universe where it's possible. You jump into this one and then you're stuck,
Or you can't jump into it at all.
or you can't jump
In
into
which
it at
case,
all.
why do we care?
Right.
The fact that we don't.
Why do we care?
That's right.
Right.
The fact that we don't have all these jumpers jumping in and out of our universe pretty much tells us that we're either the one universe that you can't jump in and out of, in which case, why do we even care if there's
Why do we
other
even
ones?
care if there's other ones?
Or it's not true.
Right.
It's pretty simple, folks. I just disproved that stupid ass theory. I falsified it.
So that's the same thing about time travelers. People say this about time travelers. Where are they all? If time travel is possible at any
Yeah.
point in the future, there should be millions of time travelers because the future is infinite in
That's
size.
right. That's right.
Right?
Maybe they can only travel into the future.
Yeah.
That's lame. Well, because we're not there yet, they don't exist. If you can only travel into the future,
That's right.
we're screwed.
It's unfalsifiable if you can only travel into the future. Because anyone who travels in the future will not be able to come back and prove that they did it.
That's right. They will just vanish.
That's right. They will just disappear into the future and we'll never know.
So why do we care? We don't.
That's right.
Time travel sucks. I'm honestly like, I'm kind of joking, but I really don't subscribe to the time travel idea. I just don't think the movies are cool.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it's really.
The only way time travel works if the mini world theory is correct.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if you
Because you have to be able to split off worlds at every moment.
Right, exactly. If worlds split off at every moment and somebody travels back in time or forward in time and they start changing stuff, it actually changes the future and they come into a different future where it was not the one they came from, in other words.
So why would you even bother time traveling? Just jump universes.
Right, stop making the universe
But
more
we already know
complicated.
that's impossible. Because if it was, it would be happening all the time.
Stop traveling back in time and making the universe more complicated. You just started a whole different branch of universes.
It's hard to make infinity more complicated, okay? You can't really do that.
Infinity plus one is still infinity.
That's right.
The Watcher says it's funny because
You know, the other thing...
show me the potsherds is a falsification statement in reverse.
What does that mean?
Like, in other words, the guy is asking for the reverse of a falsification. Show me the potsherds. Prove to me that your stuff is true.
Oh, yeah.
Is what he's saying. And that's why it's so disingenuous, so messed up. Show me the potsherds. Hey.
Yeah, but he's an archaeologist, too. He's not a scientist.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, that's true.
They're really in like what's this?
Let me read this email I got from this guy that I wrote.
Well, I'm just saying they're not really they're not really scientifically trained, other than they're like digging and sorting methods.
Right, and they focus mostly on documents.
It's more, what is the word? Something or other.
Anthropology.
Yeah. It's
so I've been writing back and forth with this guy, Keith Hamilton, who has done a bunch of research. He's written these amazing, you can look him up on academic.edu. He's written these like enormous, like these 50-page PDFs with lots of photos about different ancient sites in Egypt. But this is what he said to me when I'm talking to him about getting on the show. But he says,
I wanted to say, wait a minute.
Okay.
Because you're changed.
No, it's about what these people are. He says this.
Oh, I was going back to the mini worlds thing.
Oh, okay,
quick.
yeah.
My last thing that I wanted to say is...
I didn't change that subject. You did.
No, you started reading Brett's thing.
Oh, yeah.
Bitch.
You're right. Sorry.
All I wanted to say, this is just stupid, but like, you always complain about these physicists that I like to follow. They're all like hardcore materialists, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of them is like, he kind of believes in the many worlds theory.
Yeah.
Well, in the many worlds theory, there has to be God.
Right. Yeah. That is one thing that I say too, that if the many worlds theory is correct, because, the reason why the many worlds theory becomes popular among hardcore scientists,
Materialists?
yeah, is because the difficulty of explaining the beginning of the universe.
Yeah.
Why is it's called the anthropic principle, right? The strong anthropic principle is asking the question of why does the universe seem to be tuned for life like us, right? And that tuning is based on all these ratios between these different forces and different constants, like the fine structure constant.
Yeah.
Okay, the ratios between these things are exact to this extremely long decimal number, and if they were changed in this tiniest bit, then the universe wouldn't work for us anymore, and we wouldn't be here.
Like that one thing, it's like the helium atom had to be something like 1 point something million volts or some shit like that.
Yeah, the hydrogen atom, you mean? Helium or hydrogen?
I can't remember which one it was. Yeah,
okay. One of those.
Something
one of the
about
basic gases.
Something about it. It's probably hydrogen.
Yeah.
In order for it to actually become stabilized past helium.
Oh, okay.
Like
All right.
in order for it to be stable, like in fusion,
Yeah.
past helium, so that we'd have other things other than just
besides
hydrogen and
helium.
it had to have this specific voltage, which it does.
Right. Yeah, and that voltage is calculated to these extremely long, extremely accurate things. And if it was changed way out there in the 1 trillionth,
we would have nothing but
hydrogen gas everywhere.
And helium. Yeah.
If the difference between the strength of gravity and the strong nuclear force, or the difference between the strength of the strong and weak nuclear forces was slightly different, then nothing would work in the universe. We'd have stars that were a mile wide, a mile in diameter and would burn out in a year, or in other cases they would never form at all. Right? There's all kinds of different... You can see how the universe would change drastically just by tweaking the ratios between these numbers a tiny bit.
Okay,
and that's called the strong anthropic principle. So the reason for the many worlds theory is to explain how this is this incredibly unlikely universe that we are in, formed by chance, is to say, well, there's an infinite number of universes, and so that one makes this one likely instead of unlikely.
It would be like on the edges of this graph of infinite universes is just darkness and nothing.
Right.
And as you approach the middle, there's just like this hump of where
a mean distribution.
Things can actually exist for periods of time.
Right.
Lame. All right.
So the point is that well, I'm getting around to what you were saying. If there's an infinite number of universes that fit all possibilities in order to make this one possible, or I should say probable, then there is a universe out there where God created it.
Yeah.
And it's 6,000 years old. Because every possible universe is there. And this is the thing. It could be this one. You don't know whether or not it's this one or not. That's what makes the whole multi-world thing hilarious. They're trying to get around the whole possible, because people are like, look, the only explanation for this is intelligent design. And they're like, no. There's an infinite number of universes, and that makes this one probable. And I'm like, okay, that means that there's also many universes out there where God created it and they're only 6,000 years old, and it could be this one.
That is freaking hilarious, dude. Look. If God created the universe 6,000 years ago, but he put all this incredibly ancient stuff in it, I still want to look at the really ancient stuff.
That's right. What story are you trying to tell us?
Yes. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Or
if I'm interested in the fact that this star is 10 billion light years away, I don't care if you're like, well, it's really only 6,000 years old. It was made with the light already here. Okay, fine. Why is the light so far away, though? What's the point of that?
Yeah.
Like,
there are no such thing as dinosaur bones. That's a trick from Big Paleo. You remember that story? No. These people believe that Big Paleo, like big oil, it's Big Paleo. These people have invented dinosaur bones by carving rocks into dinosaur bone shapes. It's Big Paleo. They're making millions of dollars doing this.
Wow.
It's Big Paleo, bro.
Wow, that's crazy.
All right, so going back to archaeologists and what Keith Hamilton says about them, he says, I sort of got fed up with the poor copy table books often provided by Egyptology to explain these ancient structures, so that I decided to create these more detailed guides to better inform the reader. The feedback I get is fairly positive, more so from engineers and architects, though trying to get a response from Egyptology to the issues I raise is met with a wall of silence. A wall of silence. That was a terrible...
Yes.
It's met with a wall of science. This does not surprise me. Egyptology is a discipline generally made up of humanity and philology students. This unfortunately causes an imbalance in the study of these structures, where the study of the texts greatly outweighs that of the structure itself. As I commented on my last guide on the Assyrian, we can't see the wood for the trees. This ignoring of the structures is prevalent throughout my guides, so it is no surprise that the discipline fails to explain how these structures were built. They're humanities. Philology students.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, they're in the humanities department. They're not hard science.
Yeah.
And they're definitely not architects.
They're really good at, like, dusting off. They're really good at getting the dirt away from things without breaking them.
They can build string grids. And dig with toothbrushes and toothpicks.
Yeah.
That's why they think that it was done, everything was built with toothpicks and dedication. Because that's how they dig the stuff out.
Yeah. Dude, that would be great. Like, we could do an archaeological dig wearing butt flaps and using stone tools. See how long it would take. We could do it faster than the archaeologists. Like,
yeah. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about falsification. Going back to that, like, falsification is still
a thing
at the heart of of empirical science, and it is being used less and less, and that is a problem with academia.
Why would they want to do that to themselves? Like, to their credibility?
Because it's not hurting their credibility. I don't know. It isn't hurting their credibility, as far as I can tell. The more that they do it, the less people understand that that's what they're supposed to do. But we've had academics recently, multiple ones, tell us that people don't try to falsify things anymore. They're all trying to prove their things true. And this is true in every archaeological paper I've read. Just about. That they are trying to prove something true that they already thought before they went to the site.
Yeah.
The whole Baalbek thing with the Romans, like that whole paper, and it was like 100 pages long, was dedicated to proving something true that they thought before they got there.
Yeah.
And so what you see is they're only looking for certain kinds of evidence, and they ignore, and you can't tell what they're ignoring. It's the whole file drawer problem. What are they throwing out? Because it's not conforming to what their idea is. And then they're pointing to they're making these long stretches on things like, here's this cartouche that was on this brick that was way over here. Here's this alabaster head that was like 100 yards away from the actual dig we were doing, but that's the guy that was buried in this thing. Like,
yeah.
That's not good science. Those are huge assumptions that are being made and then no one's questioning them.
So you had made a point a long time ago about, I think it's part of this situation where the ancient aliens theory or idea
Oh yeah.
came about because of the nature of the
Yeah.
like the archaeological community.
Yeah.
And the way they're telling the story and the way they refuse to look at other data, and it's like everything that I can't remember how you said it. It was something like
because of their insistence on their own timeline that they assume a priori before going to any site. Right? They assume that they know the technological development level of any culture, like regardless of what the structure looks like that they're looking at. So they're trying to tell us these stories that are completely unbelievable by the normal person, that people that are wearing butt flaps and only have copper tools are building enormous pyramids with granite in them. That results
that are
in the
perfectly
alien...
aligned to like
Right. So people who are believing the archaeological story of the timeline of humanity are saying, well, it must have been aliens.
Okay, that and time travel. Like a really good friend of mine was like really a sort of like believer in the future human time travel idea to explain all of that.
Right.
Because the timeline that means it's the same reason,
Exactly.
right? Because the timeline
People are accepting the timeline given
the archaeologists are telling us
of the technological development of the human race, and thus they come up with things to try to explain why they built these structures that are impossible based on the prevailing theory of the development of the human race.
Yeah. So we had a discussion about it, and after he got done explaining, like, it, and it's a cool idea still.
Yeah.
But I thought, and I said this too, I was like, man, I think it's like way more likely that people were just more advanced
Yeah.
than than the archaeologists have told us that they are.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, the ancient advanced civilization is the most likely answer.
even to aliens or
Yes,
to
exactly.
time travel, any of that stuff, it's like, yeah, I mean, I understand. What's the other principle about alien life? Like, being out there, intelligent life being out there.
The Fermi paradox?
Yeah, I guess that one.
Yeah, it's got to be out there.
Yeah.
The question is where is everybody?
Where is everybody?
But like based
it's-
just on probability, it must be out there.
Yeah, and also, and that kind of suggests that, well, it is here. It has
Right.
been for a
It
long
has
time.
been, or it has been here at least before.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some form or another. But like, there's no telling how they might try to communicate with us.
Right.
They might be trying to talk to us by viruses, and we've never been able to figure
Right.
it out. We get sick, and we're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it's just aliens trying to talk to you, bro.
And that was the Orson Scott Card, right?
Yeah.
Like the viruses, yeah. But yeah, that was another thing, is the idea that they would be humanoid or
Right. Yeah, the Star Trek principle.
Yeah.
That everyone is a humanoid somehow. They just
Yeah.
have weird foreheads.
yeah.
Everybody has 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, and a mouth. They just have strange foreheads.
Yeah.
And long ears or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Star Trek principle. Everybody, all your aliens need to be humans in suits.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's hard.
Before CGI or whatever.
That's another reason why Larry Niven's known space stuff is great, because his aliens are not humans in suits.
Like Wantu.
Well, Wantu was a completely different author, but yeah, that was a really awesome alien.
That wasn't Niven?
No.
Oh.
That was like Frederick Pohl, I think. No, Niven had like the puppeteers. They were like his idea was, what would aliens be evolved from? We're evolved from omnivores, according to the standard model. Like, we evolved from things that eat both meat and plants, right? And since we have the predator brains because we ate meat, that made us smarter and smarter. But he went and said, well, like, let's have an alien based on herbivores and an alien based on pure predator what's the meat eating one? Carnivore.
Carnivore, yeah.
Right. So he had the Kazin, which were giant cats, 12 feet tall, enormous bipedal cat people who were incredibly aggressive. And then he had the puppeteers that were like these deer things that had two thin heads, and they were basically like a four-legged herd animal, but they were incredibly advanced. Yeah. Pack protectors were they were a more evolved version of humans, or less evolved, depending on how you look at it. But his aliens ideas were great. They were non-Star Trek. Like, Pearson puppeteers were these deer things that had 2 heads. And they hated going out by themselves because they were herd animals.
Yeah.
Right, so they were very secretive. I mean, they kept everything secret about where their world was and everything like that. The Kazin were incredibly aggressive and would kill you. You know, they did this whole scream and leap. If you piss them off, they're just like, rah, and jump at you and try to kill you. And humans fought like 4 wars with them before they stopped doing it. Like every time humans met with them, they would try to kill us, and we would beat them because we're smarter than they were. Yeah. Anyway, there's good ideas about, like, there's some good books out there on what kind of aliens could be out there.
Yeah.
And they're not all humanoids with weird foreheads.
So I often think about the carbon-based life situation. Like,
Yeah, there could be silica-based life.
yeah, why? Well, I had said this in a previous podcast, but I thought viruses were actually not carbon-based.
Well, yeah,
Are they?
I don't know, the Watcher would know more about this than I do. They're complex molecules. I don't know if they're carbon-based or not, but they have protein chains in them.
I thought the reason why, I could be wrong, but I thought the reason why it was sort of debatable whether or not they were alive was because they were not.
Oh, yeah, go ahead and jump in, Watcher. What do you think about this, the viruses?
So a RNA strand, it is a carbon backbone, but it's nitrogenous compounds that are going to be your actual like encoding molecules.
Well, what's the debate on whether or not viruses are life or not? What is the hinging point? Is it about carbon, or is it about them having?
It's not about carbon. It's about the fact that without a cell,
Yeah.
like the machinery of a cell to replicate itself, it's essentially inert until it gets inside of a cell and can start replicating proteins, but it can't do that without sneaking into a cell and using
the cell's
protein
machinery.
manufacturing that's there. And a virus on its own is like, it might as well be tissue paper.
I see. But how does it, like, another question about why it's life is, like, how does it know to get in the cell, right? Like, how does it have an impetus to do this?
Yeah, now that's an excellent question. That's really where the rub is.
Like, if it's just an inanimate molecule, how does it get to the cell and invade it and do what it's supposed to do? How does it know to do that? That's the question
Right.
I think would
And they're protein coated, and whenever they encounter a cell, that protein coat actually latches onto the cell at the right spot.
Right.
It injects the RNA in through the cell membrane in a way where it can get in. How does that happen?
Can
Yeah,
we
I
actually watch this
yeah.
process? Can we watch this happen? Like on a
Yeah,
video?
viral infection of a stable like somatic cell has been observed. Like you can watch it under a microscope. Under high
So
enough
the-
magnification,
so-
you can actually see the little RNA shoot itself out in there.
So the little spaceship pod looking things, like, is that actually
That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like the lunar lander
Okay.
from Apollo 11. Yeah, and it comes down, and then this little protein chain comes out of it.
Yeah, so to me, I'm like, that has to have some kind of, like, impetus. It has to have a desire or whatever. It has to know what it's doing. Otherwise, it just float around in whatever fluid it's in and not attach itself to
Now,
the cell.
I guess it could be resonant based. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, the theory behind it is that, and this doesn't really make sense when you break it down too far, unfortunately, is that there's molecular attraction, right?
Right.
So it's looking for a specific combination of points that it'll attach itself to. All right, well, when you think in terms of like your plasma, dude, that is, compared to the size of a virus, you're talking about being in an ocean like the size of Jupiter in like a family sedan.
Right.
How do you find in that the right combination quickly and easily? How
Yeah.
do you get there? How do you attach it?
You make billions of yourself.
But you have to attach to a cell first.
Right, you have to get the first one first, and
They can inject you with specific metaviruses that will go to the right place and plug into your cells and do
Yeah,
stuff.
that's nuts. See, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
If it was like,
it really is like nanomachines. I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of the
they
best way to
seem
think
to
of it.
have some kind of directive that they're following.
Exactly. I mean,
it
but
was like-
with
if
a
it was
nanomachine,
resonance
it has a base code that causes it to do what it does.
Right.
As far as we can tell, we haven't been able to identify that with viruses. But that's where the big paradox is if it isn't able to have thought processes and like a drive, then how does it get there?
I think this could be considered evidence that consciousness is fundamental.
Yeah, I think there could definitely be something said for that.
No.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back for the second half of the show. Now that Kyle's totally falsified my idea. Welcome back, mystery lovers, pill seekers, and conspiratorialists all across the fruited plain and beyond. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. We were talking about falsification in androids and weird alien viruses. And Kyle was telling me I was wrong about everything.
Hey, man, you threw that out there with just no explanation of what. I'm just like, I don't see how.
I said it could be considered to be evidence, possibly.
Why? I just want to know why.
Because they seem to have a consciousness, and they don't have a way to have one based on the standard model.
Okay, they don't have a brain.
Right, they don't seem to have what we think of as a method for thinking, and that makes me think, but they still act like they have a conscious desire to do stuff, and that makes me think that consciousness is fundamental. It's applying itself to molecules.
Yeah, that's cool. That's what I need.
I thought this was like obvious.
Right. It's not.
Okay. All right.
Not to old skirt tard like me. You need to break it down, brother.
I'll break it down. All right, so
you say shit like that, I'm like, hold up. Just a minute.
So, we were talking about this all these ideas during the break, and Brett reminded me, the Watcher reminded me of a good example of like people who aren't looking for falsification but are instead looking for proof, and then claiming that, like, okay, one of the things that he said earlier, he said it's a lack of evidence falsifies theory is not true. It says your lack of evidence makes your theory unverifiable. I can't falsify it, but you can't verify it, therefore it's false. It's logically flawed. Right. Like, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, is the saying. Right?
Yeah.
Just because there is no evidence for something does not mean that something is therefore false.
Right.
Okay, so that's what that means.
Again, we're not in court.
Right. Right.
In the courtroom, if there's a total absence of evidence, you're out. Bro.
Right.
You get out of here.
Right. Exactly.
Bring the evidence or
get
go
out
home.
Yeah. But so the whole, show me the potsherds is a request for evidence in order to prove something else that was true, that was shown true by different evidence.
The other problem with wait, maybe this is what you're saying. The other problem with the show me the potsherds thing is that the potsherds are only necessary for that guy's theory.
Right. That's right.
So that guy's theory...
The potsherds could be on a completely different continent.
Well, his theory is that you have to have potsherds in order to have this civilization.
Right.
Which may or may not be true. Like, okay, so the potsherds are on a different continent.
Yeah.
They came over here.
They came over here, and they were already advanced when they got here. So just because we don't have potsherds does not mean that this didn't happen.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. He was basically trying to say that because you can't show me potsherds, this is impossible. In other words, Schock was basically saying, like, look, the geological evidence shows that the Sphinx must be at least in this range of age, and it's far outside the bounds of what you think of as dynastic
And not
Egypt.
to mention the whole vast area of desert that has never been excavated.
Right.
That's nearby.
Right. Right next to it, all around
Right.
it.
You expect this geologist to go dig all that up.
Right.
To show you a potsherd.
Right. Or that the ancient Egyptians that came later didn't pick up all the potsherds.
Yeah.
There's not corruption, but there's if there's multiple layers of occupation, you can't expect the earliest layers to be completely unmodified by the later peoples.
Yeah. Which they definitely aren't.
Right. So another good example of this is what happened to J. Harlan Bretz, the guy who was proposing these enormous Ice Age floods to explain the features that he was seeing in the channeled scablands, right, at the Clark Fork River Valley. This basalt that's been etched out by enormous flows of water. He proposed a single gigantic flood as being the only possible way that all these geological features could take place, and the general response, which was considered to be like a good refutation of his idea, was, where's the source of your flood? Since you have no source of the water, your flood didn't happen.
Right, and he was like, the source of the water is not my problem.
Right, I'm just showing you. Yeah, it's the same problem. Like, Schock is saying the geological evidence is pointing towards this idea, and they're saying that because you can't point out some other evidence, your thing didn't happen.
Yeah,
that is not correct in science. Just because there is no known source for the flood does not mean it didn't happen.
Now, on the impact hypothesis people,
the Younger Dryas
impact hypothesis,
the Comet Research Group,
that sort of argument does kind of work for their scenario, because they have found all these impact proxies.
Yeah,
but they can't find. They are still looking for and have not yet found
a crater. Yeah.
So that's kind of a big thing that's missing, right?
Yeah.
Now, we don't know.
But that doesn't mean that the impact proxies are wrong.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it just means that we're unsure about where or what.
We're unsure of the source of the impact proxies.
Of the source of the impact proxies, exactly.
So that's the same thing.
And Schock is pointing out that it could be a solar event.
Right.
Could have been
that could cause the same impact proxies, and that's a good point. He's not saying that the impact proxies don't exist,
or that they don't say cataclysm or whatever.
Right, exactly. So basically what these people were saying was, because you can't give us a source for all this water, all of your geological evidence does not point to a giant flood.
Right.
That is not a correct way to go about science.
What it should be is like, well, if we can't find the water, if there's no way to find the water, then that is pointing towards falsifying the idea. But it requires you to look, right?
Yeah.
Like they
were demanding it from him.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was like, well, I've looked at it. Well,
and he was one of the only people that had actually been there.
Right. He was the only one that had went into the field itself.
And looking around, yeah.
Right.
That's another.
So it's same thing with the potsherds. Show me the potsherds is a disingenuous thing to ask. Just because, to imply that because Schock didn't have potsherds means that his evidence doesn't point to what he's saying it points to.
Yeah.
That's a skirp derp. It's totally incorrect in terms of like scientific, empirical observations. Like, the absence of potsherds does not mean that his evidence isn't pointing towards what it points at. Like with J. Harlan Bretz's floods, what it should have been is saying, like, they should have all said, well, let's go look for the source of the water, because this implies that there was a ton of water. Where then did it come from? Instead of saying, since you don't have a source for it, your flood didn't happen.
Right.
No, instead they should say, man, the evidence points to an enormous amount of water. Where did this come from? And then they go look for it, and then they would have found it.
But they thought that the idea of that much water was preposterous. So they...
Right. And they thought that because of a priori considerations based on uniformitarianism.
Right.
So it is, you could say that J. Harlan Bretz's theory to explain all the geological phenomena he was seeing may have been incorrect.
Yeah, it was flawed. He didn't have the whole story. Is it?
Right.
Remember that whole thing? Like, a lot of times the theories are an incomplete story. It's like you get the theory wrong, but the evidence...
The evidence is not incorrect.
Is not incorrect.
Right. And it still points to enormous floods, and it's like, at this point it is now accepted that there were at least 2 enormous floods. They tried to split it up into like 80.
40. Yeah, 80.
40 and then 80 or whatever, but it's come back down to like Meltwater Pulse 1A and 1B.
Yeah. And that was in the Lake Missoula.
Yeah, and that's still like Randall Carlson has basically falsified that by showing you that ice can't hold that much water. That once
that ice dam wouldn't hold it. Yeah.
The whole idea with Lake Missoula is that it was held by an ice dam. right? But because of the shoreline, the fossilized shorelines or whatever, we know how deep it was, 2,000 feet. An ice dam at the Clark Fork Valley cannot hold in water. Doesn't matter how much ice there was, it would destroy it because of the pressure down there is like 900 psi once it's 1,000 feet deep. 2,000 feet deep, it's even more than that. Ice does not have the structural integrity to hold in water that's 2,000 feet deep. The dam would fail long before it got that deep. So Randall Carlson has basically shown this with empirical data about ice, about the structure of ice itself. Even glacial ice, which, paleo ice, which is like much stronger than, it still wouldn't
all
hold
the freaking crystals are aligned.
That's right, and it's like a beautiful blue color, and you can see right through it.
It's giant magnets push those things together.
But it still wouldn't hold it. So his idea is that Lake Missoula was actually a water dam. That there was so much water pouring off the glaciers that it actually was just backing up into that area. And it was the water itself was damming itself. There was so much water it couldn't go through there all at once. And that was what it was. And it was just one flood.
Right. And that makes more sense.
Yeah. A water dam would work because water itself can hold itself back.
Right.
But ice is not going to hold water back. You're not going to be able to stand in front of a 2,000-foot dam on one side with all this water on the other side and have it not just destroy it. It's not possible. And then they were trying to claim that happened 80 times? So first you have to have the fact that the glacier is melting, right? The big tongue of the glacier is both melting to supply all the water that fills up Lake Missoula, but it also fills that valley somehow and blocks it 80 times over.
Yeah, where's the heat and cooling cycle?
The glacier can't both be melting and filling up the lake and also blocking the lake from letting its water out.
Well, they would say like big chunks would break off and then they would
get jammed in there, right? But the pressure of the water would shove them through. Yeah.
And it wouldn't perfectly seal. And the moment you have liquid
going through, it's going to tear it apart.
Passing the solid, it's going to be breaking away, like tearing away at the solid.
It's going to be destroying it, yeah.
Yeah, the friction alone is just going to be shrinking it.
Right.
It's like,
the erosion will just be destructive,
right, yeah, exactly.
Incredibly destructive. Okay, so I have this interesting article that kind of...
Proven wrong.
Falsified. Bam! All right, so this is really cool. This is new. Evidence of a... Well, it's not incredibly new. Evidence of a lost human civilization discovered under the North Sea. Several recent archaeological discoveries made in the Baltic and North Seas suggest that there could be an entirely unknown Stone Age civilization which once inhabited the areas which now make up Scandinavia. This Swedish Atlantis could reveal a whole new chapter of human history which we've yet to discover. What exactly lies under the icy black waters of the northern seas? Now keep in mind this is where the Baltic Sea anomaly was found. The giant Millennium Falcon underneath the ocean.
Yeah.
Lots of stone tools, it turns out. Over the last several years, hydrocarbon exploration and fishing operations have been discovering prehistoric animal bones and primitive stone tools in North Sea sediment, attracting the attention of British and Belgian scientists. A team of geologists, archaeologists, and anthropologists aboard the Belgian ship RV Belgia is now excavating sand back on the North Sea floor measuring about 30 kilometers long. Vince Gaffney, an archaeologist at the University of Bradford who is leading this expedition, says that this area of the seafloor was likely once a highly habitable piece of seashore property. Areas under the North Sea now would have been the best to live in during the Mesolithic period, prime real estate because of the coastlines then had fish, birds, and fresh water, but it is terra incognita. This area is so large that complete cultures could be out there under the water.
Oh my God.
Gaffney leads a project known as Lost Frontiers, which aims to discover... where was I? Lost my place. Which aims to uncover these hidden ancient civilizations under what is now the North Sea and Baltic Sea. According to the project's website, these lost lands hold a unique and largely unexplored record of settlement and colonization linked to climate change over millennia. It turns out that the glaciers once linked this area with Europe and the British Isles, but rising global temperatures caused the seas to rise, flooding what could have been home to an unknown civilization.
Everyone knows climate change is crap. Climate never changes. All right. That made me think of that TV series, The Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Ragnar or whatever.
Yeah.
Possibly mythical character. But the beginning of that series was really cool. And this actually happened, basically, that there was these legends of this land with like riches and gold and
Yeah.
all this stuff, you know, to the west or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Vikings had been cruising all up and down these shorelines and everything, but they'd never been over to Great Britain.
Yeah.
But there were all these ancient legends that this place had existed
Yeah,
at one
Aaron
time.
Rye.
Right? Obviously, like,
The land of Albion.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is still more recent, but it kind of made me think of, like,
Well, their legends could have been coming from a very distant past.
yeah, they were, because Rome probably went there, right?
Rome was there, yeah.
Rome was
Hadrian's
there.
Wall, yeah.
Yeah,
Fighting
so-
the Celts.
So, but it'd be cool, like, this idea of, like these legends that came from way back when the water levels were lower and
Yeah.
all those civilizations existed, and that channel between Great Britain and the mainland
Yeah,
of
with
Europe.
a little river. Or
Yeah,
even, like
exactly.
almost nothing, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
freaking cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So thinking of, like, as the sea levels are rising, you know, and it's becoming less and less traversable, I guess.
Yeah, navigable.
The channel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then it just becomes
And
a
whatever
legend.
cataclysm is causing it is obviously ruining everybody's technology and stuff,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, but they knew it was there.
Right. In the far distant future, after the cataclysm, they would still have these legends of this like land of wonders across this channel.
Yes.
And they would just know that it was across that water somewhere over there.
Right.
And they used to be able to walk to it or whatever, and now it's out in the seas somewhere.
Yeah.
It's mysterious.
The ancients walked across the sea to
Yeah.
that land of gold.
So that reminds me.
That's just freaking awesome.
yeah,
I love that.
the land of gold. That reminds me, though. I wanted to talk about this. This idea of a civilization that humans are a species with amnesia. Velikovsky talked about this, right? This was the original idea. Where this originally came from is Velikovsky. Graham Hancock says it a lot that humans are a species with amnesia, but Velikovsky,
Amnesia.
yeah, we are a species with amnesia.
We love Graham Hancock.
Yeah,
He's
he's
great
awesome.
to imitate. Yeah.
It's a bigoted old shaman. But Velikovsky was the first one to propose this idea. And he proposed it because he was coming out with these ideas that these enormous cataclysms took place. Right? And that there were multiple cataclysms. And that if you look at a single person, if they have something traumatic that happens to them, often they won't be able to remember it. Right? You'll have amnesia for the period of the trauma. Okay, you won't recall it. Now, this doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to some people.
Yeah.
And so if you just look at what happens to that person psychologically with that amnesia and the way that the actual events, which are in their minds but blocked or repressed, affect them throughout their lives, right? People will have violent urges that come out of nowhere. They'll have unexplained emotions. They'll have unexplained physiological problems. Like all these kind of things have been shown to happen psychologically with people that have repressed memories of traumatic events. Okay, so the common psychological cure for this is to make them remember those repressed memories so that they can deal with them.
Yeah.
If they can't, they have all these strange problems that have no. I mean, phobias may be based on this, right? Some phobias. Some people are born with phobias, and that makes me think of past lives, that they had some traumatic events that have had. You know, like there have been actual studies that show that people that can link people with that like have a fear of water, right, from an early age. It's very strange. Like there have been children that have hydrophobia that remember drowning and dying that way in a previous life, and then they were able to actually go and find evidence that this person that they remembered being actually existed and actually died the way that they thought that they did. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the point is that if you can consider humanity as a whole as having some kind of common psyche, right? This idea of morphic resonance, maybe. Then what would happen to humanity as a whole if it has amnesia from some traumatic event that happened based on a global cataclysm that happened in the past?
You'd end up with weird, like,
Well, yes, exactly.
certain people just randomly like have crazy psychological issues and just like go off and do mass murders and
Velikovsky proposed that this is the reason why that if you look at certain ancient legends that talk about a golden age, and then we look at, there are certain places where we find these incredibly ancient structures that have no sign of any kind of ramparts for defense, that they didn't have weapons, right? So he's basically proposing that the pre-cataclysmic civilizations were actually in a golden age, and they didn't have species-wide amnesia, and they didn't have the species-wide psychological issues, and therefore they didn't have war.
Yeah.
That war is a result of the amnesia that we have as a species.
Yeah.
That global conflict is a result of this, right? So you have the cataclysms, and afterwards you have all this death and destruction. Everybody's fighting each other. You have the advent of blood sacrifice, people killing humans by the thousands in order to pacify the gods because they think the gods want to kill people. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just wondering, like, it's an interesting idea that, like, what if the theories of the legends of the Golden Age are actually talking about a time previous to any species-wide amnesia that we had, and thus any species-wide psychological strangeness.
Yeah.
And think about, again, the Tower of Babel story.
Freaking globalists. This is the damn globalists.
I'm telling you, it's the globalists. They've been doing it for thousands of years.
I don't want to sound like a freaking globalist when I'm talking about the Tower of Babel situation. Communion. But yeah, okay, so I don't know. I have this maybe irrational disliking, or I want to reject these ideas of this
Golden Age?
past age of like, oh, perfect harmony and everything's cool. It's like, no. Like, everything in nature is always trying to kill you.
I
you
know.
all have to survive, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it never has been.
Right.
And there are just fundamental things that are difficult, and there are struggles. And like, even if the climate and everything is great and you build a wonderful society, there's still going to be hardship. You know,
Not do that.
I mean,
But there is the story of Eden, where man could once communicate with the animals and they weren't afraid of him, they weren't fighting with him. The whole story of Enkidu, where he was at first was in a state where he was at one with nature. So this does exist in the legends, that saying that that humanity didn't used to be separate from nature in the sense that we're constantly fighting it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that technological advancements obviously have eased our suffering.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get used to that, and then we're just like,
Not do that.
man, my freaking internet connection's like out today. Damn it, life sucks.
Yeah, first world problems.
Yeah. So it's obvious, you know, however good it is, like there's always going to be just problems, right? There's always going to be. They're not as hardcore as back when you used to have to wear a butt flap and go
Fight saber-tooths for
first
your food.
make a knife out of a stone, and then fight a saber-toothed tiger in order to eat, and probably die in your late 20s so that your child can live to his 20s.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. Things have been bad and they get better. Like, I think technology does that.
I cannot do that.
All I'm speculating on is and this is what Velikovsky was proposing, is that what if it is possible for humanity to be in a completely different mass psychological state in which existing was much less conflict based.
Yeah, I think that is possible in the sense, like, let's say
not that there wouldn't be any conflict.
let's say that today aliens came, just boom, like, let everybody know, like, hey, we're here, we're technologically advanced, we're
Suddenly we'd
awesome.
all band together because they're aliens now.
We've been watching you guys for thousands of years, and we finally were able to build up our technology to get here and just be like, what's up?
Okay.
Our entire psychological situation as
would completely shift.
would
Yeah.
completely change. So yes, I think that is possible. that is definitely possible. Another aspect of it that I was going to bring up was it doesn't necessarily have to be like this strange sort of morphic resonance collective amnesia thing. It could be that when a person has, one of those situations that they're repressing, a lot of times it's not that they don't remember it themselves, but that they will not communicate it to others.
Mm-hmm.
They keep it to themselves. So you can imagine these generations after some crazy cataclysm where almost everybody died, and you have all of the grandfathers and grandmothers in the world will not talk about what happened to their grandchildren who are coming of age and trying to learn what's going on in the world.
Right. They won't tell them the story.
They won't tell them what's really going on. They have psychological problems.
Right.
Their children are probably telling their children, well, you'd have to ask them. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like this. And so it's like, you can see how those types of things would, just after a few generations, you would have so much lost.
Yeah.
And strange customs.
Yeah.
Built up from that. So yeah.
Because of the ideas that these people who lived through it came up with in order to explain their survivor's guilt and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
Survivor's guilt must have been enormous after these cataclysms, because you have to ask, why did everyone die except me?
Right.
And survivor guilt is a known thing.
And that's another thing that all these communities that only had a few survivors that didn't completely die out afterwards, that actually did expand and grow.
Yeah.
Probably thought they were the only ones.
Probably.
And it
so
might
they
have
had
been
these ideas of like everyone was killed except us.
Yeah, it could have been thousands of years, and still today, like there's some uncontacted tribes in the Amazon.
Yeah.
That have been there for 12,000 years or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
But now that, they probably know at this point they're not the only ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at these people that were speculating on surviving a global cataclysm. And they were talking about that if let's say that you survive the initial cataclysm, all the floods, all the earthquakes and everything, your immediate problem afterwards is to find fresh water.
Yeah.
If you can't find fresh water within 48 hours, you're a dead person.
You're screwed.
So
hopefully it's raining.
And that's not going to be fresh. It's going to be mud.
Oh yeah, full of mud.
It'll be mud.
That's true.
So and everything else is going to be inundated by the ocean.
Buy life straws, folks. Life straws.
You can drink that rain mud with a life straw. 300 gallons of rain mud you can drink.
We need to contact Life Straw and just be like, hey.
Yeah.
We'd like to be a sponsor.
You guys should sponsor us. Yeah. We're telling people to prep with life straws. It's a great prepper equipment. But think about that. Like, if you're not in the exact right place on the earth somewhere, where after all the inundations and the tidal waves and the mud of rain and everything, if you can't find a source of fresh water within 48 hours, you're dead.
Yeah.
So if you don't have some stored somewhere that doesn't get messed up by the cataclysm, a cistern or something, and then even if you got a cistern that somehow magically doesn't get destroyed by the cataclysm, and you're able to, that's a finite source of water. You've got to go find water somewhere. So this is one of the reasons why there are places they call, the lucky spots on the planet where people seem to have survived these cataclysmic events. Because there were springs that did not get deep springs that did not get destroyed.
They didn't get disrupted by whatever.
Right.
Man. Oh, it's a mean selection process right there.
Yeah. So like Ayers Rock in Australia, or what the natives call Uluru, right, is one of those places. It's this very strange monolithic block that goes way deep down into the earth, and it has these natural springs deep in caves inside of it. So since it's a monolithic rock, it would have survived it was much more likely to survive earthquakes. It's not going to collapse because it isn't multiple layers. It's a single freaking block of stone, right?
Yeah, and actually, stuff's going to be moving around it, and it's
right. It's actually in all this sand, right? So the sand might be moving or whatever, and it's going to be shifting around and stuff. But the springs that are in it, deep in the sources in these deep caves, are not going to be affected. So anybody around that will survive, and that's why the I think that's why the Aborigines still, to this day, like venerate that rock, because it saved them, or at least some of them, from the cataclysms that happened in that area. Because it had sources of water that were like not affected by cataclysmic events deep inside of it. That's just my idea.
That's cool. It reminds me of the whole thing with the Hebrews. You know, Moses brought them out into the desert.
Yeah.
And there was this one part where they were running out of
we
water.
have no water. And he's like,
Yeah, and he takes that Aaron's rod or whatever,
Yeah.
the staff, and he strikes that stone.
right.
And it just like
fresh water comes pouring out of it.
pouring out
yeah.
of it. That's got to be like
Some kind of like hidden knowledge in that. Yeah. Or it's evidence that he had some kind of advanced technology.
well, yeah.
Who knows? Aaron's rod is a very sought after ancient relic, you know?
Donate to the pyramid scheme. We gotta go find that thing. That and the Shamir.
Yeah, and the Spear of Destiny. Okay, so I have another article that's interesting about Stonehenge. This is a great, like, you know, WTF built a Stonehenge.
Wait, let's get to that after this break.
Oh, okay.
One more break.
One more break.
Last segment.
All right. Are we taking a break right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take it right now. Come back and talk about Stonehenge.
Right after this brief word from our sponsors.
Are you tired of checking your feed every Wednesday and seeing a new Snake Bros episode? Does your head hurt from 30% brain expansion? And are you tired of having your mind exploded? If you suffer from any of these conditions, don't go to your doctor. Instead, send your money to the Snake Bros Pyramid Scheme. Donate any amount to Brothers of the Serpent Podcast and send those Snake Bros straight to pyramids.
I sent Snake Bros $2 and they went and explored an ancient volcano.
Snake Bros Pyramid Scheme. Scientifically proven to increase the probability of Snake Bros getting lost and dying.
I gave Snake Bros $5 on PayPal and they done took off digging in a cave.
Snake Bros Pyramid Scheme on PayPal now. Click on the PayPal link at brothersoftheserpent.com. Donate now and send those Snake Bros straight to pyramids.
And we're back. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. High atop the Edwards Plateau. The bottom of the ancient sea. Someplace where everyone died and a few people were left to forget about it.
So during the break, we had a long conversation about this whole idea, and like I think we should summarize. Basically, you wanted to finish out your idea on this the falsity of this utopian.
Yeah,
concept.
I guess what I was trying to say is that I have this knee-jerk reaction to reject the idea that there was this utopian past where we all got along and we were all one with nature and like all the crystals glowed and we took and whatever. Just doesn't. I just reject that because
There's the crystals glow.
there's too much about.
No, I
We were one with the trees and the breeze. No, but there's too much. Like I was pointing out, like we still have all the viruses, and the viruses are hitting us, and they're trying to figure out which. They're screwing us up. We're getting sick. We're getting diseases that make us insane. These things are happening. That is part of life.
Yeah.
It's not. There is not going to be that utopian moment.
Right,
where-
but you
where
could
everything-
see how it could be called a utopia compared to the post-cataclysmic world.
and
And then
And
that
the
would be
Watcher was-
exaggerated over time.
That's right. The Watcher was pointing out that it's like, and this is also what I think. Is that like, you have this time now where we can speak to each other instantaneously across the globe, across the sea, over the mountain. You know, through the center of the world. Like,
Beyond the sea,
think about it.
she's there waiting for me.
That's very good. If I'm talking,
My lover sits on golden sands and watches the ships as they go sailing. All right.
if I'm talking to someone on the other side of the world, it's like I'm speaking through the earth to them. So there's this like, if everything
Using
was
crystals, 'cause
yeah,
they actually are.
exactly. If everything was destroyed now, it'd be like back in this time we were so great. We had this magic and everything was one. We were one with the world. We were all communing to each other.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we had the internet.
Yeah.
No, we were actually fighting scriptards on the internet that whole time.
Right. And it sucked because they're assholes.
That's right.
And everybody knows.
And when our connections broke down, we were like, dang it. So life was hard.
Golden Age problems.
And it's all. So that's all I meant, and also I want to stress the point that it is a knee-jerk reaction, and it may not be totally rational because the ideas that Velikovsky and that was writing about and that Russ was pointing out are also they're interesting. They're possible to me.
Yeah.
Like I see that, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how these major global events. So. This is a bad summary, but we were talking about the possibility that we saw something coming
Oh, yeah.
300 years away.
Right.
What would happen? We would all become of one language.
First,
of
there would be
one
a
purpose.
global freakout, but
Yeah.
eventually people would focus on how can we survive this in
Right.
some way, yeah.
So the whole barrier and all of the resources that we spend on war and
Espionage
defense and
and-
all
yeah.
the shit, most of that would go away. There surely would still be a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. But it would be a lot of that could be refocused into something, and then and even if that didn't happen, you could still compare a pre-cataclysmic world to a post-cataclysmic world as a utopian environment.
Yeah, but if it did happen, most likely our technology would advance so ridiculously rapidly compared to what it is doing now.
Right.
I cannot
And
do
people
that.
would be, and there would be people all around the world trying to build things that would survive the cataclysm.
And it would be that technology would be very like unidirectional.
Yeah.
Like right now we have this
It would be monolithic.
yeah, exactly. Like in the past we had this technological advancement that was very broad brush.
Right.
It was like all different kinds of things were being invented to
And
solve.
suddenly we're all focused on this one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
One problem.
Right.
Solve this one problem. And,
Right.
and what comes of that is going to be, there's going to be Velcro.
Yeah.
It's going to be like
Microwave ovens. Liposuction.
That's right. There's going to be certain strange things that come off of that one focused problem. But still,
Most of it would be giant blocks of stone.
that's right. Yes. So it is true in both sense that you could have this collective amnesia, and that there was a time before that humanity was a certain way that is not today, not
Yeah.
anymore. I don't think it's a utopia, but
It's relatively a utopia, basically.
it could be. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're still gonna get mad when you like, shut off our video game.
Yeah.
Before
Hold
we
down
get
that
saved.
reset button.
That's
God
right.
dang it!
That's right.
All right, so I have this article that's very interesting about Stonehenge, like I was talking about. Some Stonehenge stones.
Real quick.
What?
Also, there would be a focus on tech that would span the cataclysm or ways to pass the knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. That would be the focus. Either to survive it somehow or to stop it. And then once we figured out, if we figured out it's unstoppable, then what can we do to survive it?
Right. And it would be both things. Like
Yeah.
you'd have the legends of the abilities of the wizards of the past,
Mm-hmm.
along with all of the mythological knowledge, basically. Of
Right.
like trying to preserve whatever we had come up with. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think the idea of looking at single characters and myths as entire civilizations is fascinating, because like you can imagine that if something like this happened right now, that the US and the EU and the UK and Russia could all be compressed, each one into a single character as what their nation was doing,
Yeah.
and the powers that they specifically had, right?
Oh, dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so some Stonehenge stones were already in place when humans arrived. Think about that. While the mystery of why Stonehenge was built remains a puzzle. Just makes me want to break out into song. The mystery of why the mystery of stop that. The mystery of why it was built where it's still somewhat standing may have been solved, and the answer opens up a new mystery. A leading Stonehenge expert and one of the few people to have actually excavated at the site claims that 2 of its largest stones were placed there millions of years before humans arrived, and their summer solstice alignment with the sun was merely a coincidence. Wait, what? In an interview with The Times about his research, which has just been published in the journal British Archaeology, archaeologist, journalist, and photographer Mike Pitts describes how he came to this radical theory. It starts at the heel stone, which is the largest sarsen stone at the site. Sarsen means a sandstone block. Located 75 meters or 250 feet from the center of Stonehenge, outside the entrance and close to the highway, it weighs 60 tons and is 15.4 feet high, with an additional 4 feet underground. The heel stone's significance starts with the fact that it's the only sarsen at Stonehenge that has not been shaped or dressed, both signs that it would have been carved before being moved to its present location. Its size and shape indicated otherwise to Pitts. And this is another guy with an aptronym. You pay attention. The assumption used to be that all the sarsens at Stonehenge had come from the Marlborough Downs more than 20 miles away. The idea has since been growing that some may be local and the heel stone came out of a big pit. If you are going to move something that large, you would dress it before you move it to get rid of some of the bulk. That suggests it has not been moved very far. It makes sense that the heel stone has always been more or less where it is now, half buried. The big pit that Pitts referred to is a 6-meter diameter hole he himself discovered while digging near the heel stone in the 1970s. So Pitt discovered the pit.
While digging a pit.
The size makes it too big to have been used for a standing stone, so he thinks it's where the heel stone was lying before it was lifted out and moved. In fact, Pitts believes the heel stone and stone 16, another odd-shaped stone, are visible remnants of a large number of broken sarsen boulders that were buried beneath Stonehenge. He also believes that stone 16 came from a different hole near the center of Stonehenge and that the 2 stones in that time had something unusual in common. The most likely explanation is that it too held a natural sarsen boulder. It's possible that at the end of the Ice Age we had 2 really large, visible boulders, probably the 2 largest on the Salisbury Plain, close together on the midsummer sunrise, midwinter sunset axis.
Man. Is this that blue granite?
No, these are sarsen stones. They're limestone. They're sandstone blocks.
Okay.
So, did that mysterious natural alignment millions of years ago of 2 huge boulders with the sun draw people to this site over 5,000 years ago and inspire them to drag more massive stones from 20 miles away to build their own massive monument to something?
I didn't know there were big limestone blocks in Stonehenge.
Yeah, so there's a picture of the heel stone right there. And see how it's very natural looking.
Yeah.
And this is really far away from the actual Stonehenge itself, and it's much older than the Stonehenge circle.
Okay.
Okay. So he's pointing out, and this is extremely large. Look at the people back there. Okay, so it's a big block. It's a huge stone, and it's been stood up. So he thinks that it like was laying down, and it's actually like a it's an erratic. It was laying down in the field, half buried, and whatever, just sort of sticking out, and people pulled it out of there and stood it up. Mm-hmm. And made it actually align perfectly, where it was like in this rough alignment with another block that was like another stone that was like that farther away. That's this guy's theory, that these 2 stones were actually already there in the field, and people stood them up in this alignment, and then later on it was built over and built over and built over. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's an interesting idea.
So he doesn't really have... There's not a reason other than just like this theory that he has that they possibly were there, which is what caused the building of Stonehenge.
Well, he found these ancient deep pits
that look
that he thinks that these stones were pulled out of. He says they're too big to explain as being a socket for a block that's not there anymore. So he thinks that these pits are where they excavated these already present stones and moved them to their present position. Mm. And that was kind of cool, but I really wanted to read it because of the freaking acronym. Pits. Discovered pits in which he thinks these stones were found. I was like, what's going on?
That's what we were talking about, like naming your kid. It's like maybe you can predict their their profession and try to give them an acronym.
Yeah.
It would be what did they call the Steves had this name where it's like the acronym was given
Oh yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, they made the acronym after they had already made the name.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called, but yeah.
An afternoon.
Afternym. It's an afternym.
So it's something like that, right? You try to give your kid the name that of a profession that you think like he just might randomly end up being part of.
Yeah. You try to give him a name that will make him do that thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm gonna name my kid Science. Do science.
Mad scientist.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I have a couple other articles here. There's some interesting stuff about newly discovered Nazca lines. I just want to read this one real quick. Newly discovered Nazca lines predate the Nazca culture.
Oh, it's a backronym.
A backronym
Steve. Strong thermal emission velocity enhancement.
is a backronym of Steve.
Acronym.
Afternym is pretty close.
Acronym.
Acronym.
That's good.
All right, if you believe that every dark cloud has a silver lining, this story is for you. In late 2014, environmental protesters trying to get the attention of attendees at a conference in Peru on climate change placed plastic letters on the ground in the Nazca Desert to spell out their message and accidentally damaged the famous set of Nazca lines that formed the hummingbird.
Accidentally, yeah.
They're all in prison for life now. While scanning the area with drones to assess the damage, archaeologists were stunned to find 50 new lines that could not be seen by satellite nor on the ground because the lines were extremely fine or faint. Even more exciting and puzzling, the new lines form strange shapes that predate the Nazca culture they were named for. Who made them, and are there any more? The Nazca lines and the Nazca Desert in southern Peru are named for the Nazca culture, which populated the area from 100 BCE to 800 CE. The lines are large, up to 370 meters to 1,200 feet long, ancient geoglyphs depicting animals, humans, and geometric shapes. And speculation on their purpose runs the gamut from messages to the gods to maps for alien visitors to directional signs for traders and religious pilgrims to spiritual structures like Stonehenge. Stonehenge is
Spiritual
structure. Whatever they are, they've always been attributed to the Nazcas. That may change with these new discoveries. This is a quote. This means that it is a tradition of over 1,000 years that precedes the famous geoglyphs of the Nazca culture, which opens the door to new hypotheses about the function and meaning. In an interview with National Geographic, Peruvian Ministry of Culture archaeologist Johnny Ilsla described the importance of these new lines. In the same article, Peruvian archaeologist and lines discoverer Luis Jamie Castillo points out the differences in these lines and why they haven't been spotted before. Most of these figures are warriors. See, and that's an assumption right there. Like, they're people figures, but that doesn't mean they're warriors necessarily.
Yeah.
Most of these figures are warriors. These ones could be spotted from a certain distance, so people had seen them, but over time they were completely erased. While the Nazcas drew mostly animals, birds, and geometric shapes, these human figures were created by members of the Paracas culture, which lived in the area before the Nazcas between 800 BCE and 100 BCE. Until now, the Paracas were best known for their shaft tombs, which are vertical grave sites used for multiple burials that were reused, and the heads were often taken out, used in rituals, and returned to the shafts. The lines of the Paracas culture appear to have been carved onto the ground, often on hillsides, so that they might have been seen by people in the town. See, this reminds me of there's a famous spaceman in the Nazca lines. I think that might have been one of them.
And the candelabra or whatever.
Their lines on the hillsides, yeah. The candelabra is on the shore. It's not in the Nazca Desert, but it is close.
How do they know they're... Well, I've never heard of this Paracas graves. Like, are they... That's
where the
Nazca
Paracas elongated skulls came from. The Paracas is that's where they found like 300 of those crazy elongated skulls that you see the pictures of that are not done by... Well, like some of the bigger ones are not... Can't be explained by skull binding.
Yeah.
So the Paracas people, and I think, I ignore the dates that they give on here because they don't know how old these things are. But okay, so it says, This explains why they were so faint, while the Nazca lines, which were created by digging down to lighter colored dirt and protected with stones, are still very visible from the Earth and from space. Of course, those stones and the hard work of Peru's government and preservationists can't protect the lines from today's humans, blah, 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 blah. Anyway. So, I just thought that was interesting that they found evidence of more ancient, more faded images beneath the existing Nazca lines that everybody knows about.
That's cool. And you can't see them from a plane or satellite?
They were able to see them with drone LiDAR.
Oh. Ah, there's that drone LiDAR again. Dang it. Scan the whole...
Scan
plateau.
everything.
Scan it all.
Scan the entire planet. Dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You need that satellite.
yeah. Try to convince China that there's a plot against them in the Amazon. So
That's
they
right.
will LiDAR the entire thing from their LiDAR satellite that they're going to build after somebody else
Trust
builds
me,
it.
there's submarines under the Amazon forest right now.
That's right.
You need to
There's
find
submarines in the Amazon River right now. You need to LiDAR it.
them. Yeah.
All right, so we were talking about kind of getting into the whole Babel idea and the destruction of the world and this past utopia, and like I wanted to talk about the Temple of Man at Tiwanaku/Pumapunku in Peru, Bolivia. Peru/Bolivia. Tiwanaku/Pumapunku at Peru/Bolivia. Okay? I never know which one to attribute it to because it's different every time. Some articles say it's in Bolivia and other articles say it's in Peru. Because it's
Really?
right on the border, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Temple of Man is that sunken temple or whatever. It's called a temple, whatever it is. It's a sunken plaza.
It's like a big, like paved, flat platform area with some pillars and a wall.
Yeah,
and
but
stairways
it's
going
sunken
up.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the walls are all these different carved faces
Yeah, these
that are
stones
humanoid.
that stick out
Yeah.
that are carved into faces.
Yeah. And like that reminds me of Göbekli Tepe in the sense that it looks like a memorial of something that no longer exists. But in this case, it's a memorial of the races of men, the races of humanoids. And you could see how, like, if there was some kind of, and we know that there were these massive cataclysmic events, especially multiple ones, that eventually most of these races would die out. There would be a few lucky people, and they would be from one race that survived. And then those people would repopulate the Earth. So you can imagine that pre-cataclysm, there might have been many, many different humanoid races, and we know this just from the archaeological record that there were the Denisovans or whatever they're called, and the Neanderthals, and the Homo floresiensis or whatever, the little people. And then there's all the legends and myths of tribal cultures talking about giants and tiny people, you know. And so, like, I look at like, if you go and look at pictures of this, look at those faces and how strange they are. Some of them you recognize as being a recognizable, like a racial
or
phenotype.
whatever, yeah.
But most of them, you're just like, what the hell is that? You know, and yet they're so detailed that you get the idea that they're actually depicting, that this isn't artistic, that they're depicting what really used to exist. Just like at Göbekli Tepe, they have all these animals that don't exist anymore, but some of them have been found in the paleontological record. Okay, that fossils of them have been found, so we know that some of these animal types existed, and so that they're not making things up.
Yeah.
And so that Temple of Man thing is fascinating to me in that aspect. And what's also interesting is where it is in terms of the Göbekli, or in terms of the Tiwanaku/Pumapunku complex. Pumapunku is the older part that is made of these enormous, gigantic blocks. Tiwanaku is newer than that.
Yeah.
Now, some people, when you read about it, Tiwanaku is used to refer to all of it. But Pumapunku is actually the most ancient part, and that's where these just gigantic, completely unexplained impossible blocks are, that have these weird cut marks in them, and they look like they're pieces of machines.
God, that place is so crazy looking. That's one of my favorite places. Just look. I mean, it's not even a structure, really. It's just like, it's just like the box of Legos,
Yeah.
half buried in the sand, and you're just like,
Yeah.
what
The other
did that
thing
piece do?
the other thing that's near there. See if you can pull a picture of this, Watcher. It's called the Samaipata megalith in Bolivia. See if you can pull up some pictures of that and post them up there, because it reminds me of some of the the strange blocks that we see at Pumapunku that have these weird gear cuts into them or whatever. This place is very much like that, except it's a single gigantic piece of stone sticking up out of the jungle that has all these crazy cuts into it that are just completely unexplained. And of course they say it's a ritual, it has ritual significance, but nobody can explain what ritual.
Where is this place?
It's in Bolivia. It's called the Samaipata megalith. I'm hoping the Watcher will pull up some pictures. I've shown it to you before.
We've had a terrible internet connection.
Yeah.
So, here he is.
There he
coming
is.
back. And then I just had to let someone in the gate.
Oh. So they could have called my phone too? Maybe that's what happened?
Maybe that's what happened. Anyway, that's why I didn't know where you were talking about.
I'm just saying that that this Pumapunku place in Peru, right on the border of Bolivia. Yeah, there's some of it. Not the. Yeah, look at that.
Whoa.
That huge stone outcrop. See if you can find.
They did that with the Shamir. I mean,
Yeah,
just,
see if you can
cut
find
all
a
that
top-down
stuff out.
picture of it, Watcher. And there's even a 3D model that somebody has built that really shows it really well, the whole thing, because it's so enormous that it's hard to find pictures that show the entire thing.
That is crazy.
But like, what could that be for? And up at the top, there's this circular gear-looking thing set down into it. We'll put these pictures in the show notes. It is a completely unexplained thing, and it's just in the middle of nowhere in Bolivia. But look how it looks similar to the cuts in some of the big Pumapunku blocks.
Yeah.
Those weird squares cut into it, and the different,
Just the roundness and of some of these
shows you how old it is.
reminds me of the blocks in Sacsayhuaman, like the little knobs and stuff on them.
Yeah, look at that. That's the top of it.
Dude,
It's enormous.
Awesome. Yeah, that's straight up Shamir. That's classic
Yeah.
Shamir-esque.
Also, think of how much that resembles in some ways the Yonaguni monument that's underwater in Japan. How it's got these weird, all these
true.
angular cuts along the side of it.
Yep.
But somebody came up there and flattened that whole mountaintop and then cut all these weird shapes into it. And see the tracks way out there at the end?
Yeah. Cart ruts.
No one knows what it's for.
Dude, that is wild.
Yeah, so we'll put the pictures of this in the show notes. But I think that this is like, whatever this is machinery. It's like the remnants. There was machine here. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't see how it could be ritual.
This is like this is a circuit board. They pressed it, and then it was.
Yep.
Like there were metals poured into these grooves, and
yeah, this is the base for the circuitry.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing is just incredibly difficult to explain. There's no structure.
Yeah.
There's
no blocks like on top of it.
Right. It is monolithic.
That is wild. What? That's just crazy, dude. Oh my god. You guys gotta go look at these pictures.
Yeah. The Samaipata megalith in Bolivia. And it's at the top of the mountain. It's difficult to even breathe there. This is like the same elevation as Tiwanaku is. Like, it's at 11,000 feet or whatever. If you're not, one of the natives, you basically have to have an oxygen mask.
That's crazy.
So I think that it's very interesting that these things may be connected in some way. I have no idea what the structure could be for.
Yeah, and whatever was, I mean, if it was actually a tool or a machine or something, there would have been all kinds of stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
And it's all gone.
It's all gone.
So
exactly.
It was washed away.
Right. All that's left is the foundation. Up. Yeah.
Right. It's crazy. It's just nuts.
So another thing I was looking at recently was like anomalous iron tools found in Egypt. And yeah, Samaipata is the name of it. Samaipata megalith is what they call it. It's not really a megalith. It's just it's a stone outcrop that's been carved into all these different things, and it's incredibly worn and eroded, so that everything is kind of smooth. But yeah, there's all these unexplained features all over it, which I agree is
And
very
where did all the rubble go that they cut away from it?
right.
You know, it's just crazy.
Now, what was it for?
Kicking ass. I mean, why else would you do something like that? Like, dude, we're gonna build this thing. We have to uncover this massive rock outcrop off of this mountain, and then we have to carve it completely into some strange stuff. There's only one reason to do that.
Kicking ass.
That's right. You have to have a plan to kick ass.
This is one of the places I would love to visit because this is not on the beaten path of tourism.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of nowhere in Bolivia, and it's just very little work has been done on it. It's, you know.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Straight to monoliths.
Straight to monoliths. Yeah, that cartlet set right there is very strange. I don't know how to explain that. So anyway, we'll put all the I know you guys are probably listening to this going like, what are you guys talking about? We'll put the pictures in the show notes, so go check them out. I think it's very interesting how it looks very similar to Yonaguni and to some of the giant blocks that are impossible blocks that are around the world that are unexplained. And a lot of the stuff in Peru that have weird divots and gear cog looking things in them. And
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Vara under this thing.
yeah, could be a Vara under there. Yep, need to find the secret door. Probably one of those blocks you can push. It doesn't look like it, but you can push it. That's the first temple. On your way to fight Ganon. All right, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much
070
for episode 070 of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. I think that's it. I'm just going to say thank you guys very much. Keep listening, and we will keep exploring the mysteries. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.
Yep.
I cannot do that. I cannot do that. Yeah!